The stars twinkled in the vast emptiness of space as the research vessel glided silently between them. Professor Kalazin peered through the viewport, his four eyes blinking at different intervals. The old Vosh scholar had spent 50 years studying ancient texts and fragments about a species called humans. Most people in the Galactic Confederation thought humans were just stories to scare children. "Professor, we're approaching the dead planet," said his assistant, a young Xerillian named Meepo. His blue skin reflected the console lights as his six-fingered hands danced across the controls. "Excellent. Prepare for landing near the signal source," Kalazin replied. His voice was raspy with age, but still carried the excitement of a true believer. The Confederation had existed for over 10,000 years, uniting hundreds of species across the spiral arm of the galaxy. The oldest races, like Kalazin's Vosh and Meepo's Xerillians, passed down stories of a powerful species called humans who once traveled among the stars before suddenly vanishing. Most scholars laughed at Kalazin's research. Chasing ghosts, they called it. But 3 days ago, an automatic survey drone had found something on this dead world that matched the strange symbols in Kalazin's research. The ship landed with a gentle thud on the barren surface. Wind had shaped the red sand into waves that stretched to the horizon. Nothing had lived here for thousands of years. Life support systems activated. "We can breathe outside, but it won't be pleasant," Meepo said, checking the readings. They walked for nearly an hour before reaching the site. It looked like nothing special, just a small opening in a rock face, partially covered by sand. "The entrance should be here," Kalazin said, comparing his data pad to the surroundings. "Help me clear this sand." They worked silently, removing layers of red dust until they revealed a door made of a dull gray metal. Strange symbols were etched into its surface. "These are the same as in the Temple of Val," Kalazin whispered, touching the markings with trembling fingers. "Written language of the mythical humans." "How do we open it?" Meepo asked, scanning the door with his equipment. Before Kalazin could answer, the door slid open with a hiss of escaping air. Lights flickered on inside, illuminating a corridor that led underground. "Automatic systems still working after all this time," Kalazin said with awe. Their technology was truly remarkable. The corridor led to a small room with empty shelves along the walls. In the center stood a single pedestal, and on it rested a small cube made of the same gray metal as the door. "This is all." "Just one box." Meepo sounded disappointed. Kalazin approached slowly, his heart racing. "This could be the proof I searched for my entire life." The cube had writing on one side. Kalazin had spent decades studying the symbols believed to be human language. He read aloud, "In case of extinction, break glass." "What does that mean?" "There's no glass here," Meepo said, moving closer. "It's a phrase from their culture. A safety measure for emergencies," Kalazin explained. He carefully picked up the cube, feeling its weight in his hands. As he turned it over, Meepo reached out curiously and touched the surface. The cube suddenly hummed to life, glowing with a soft blue light. Before either of them could react, it projected a star map into the air above them, with a single point pulsing brightly. "What did you do?" Kalazin gasped. "Nothing. I just touched it." Meepo backed away. The cube began to vibrate, then emitted a high-pitched sound that made them cover their ears. A beam of intense light shot up from it, passing through the ceiling as if it weren't there. "It's sending a signal," Kalazin realized with dawning horror and excitement, "to the galactic rim." The light faded, and the cube went dark. But something had changed. They could feel it. 3 days later, as their ship approached the nearest Confederation outpost, an urgent message came through. "Professor Kalazin." The station commander's voice was tight with tension. "You need to report to Centrum Prime immediately. The High Council demands your presence." "What's happened?" Kalazin asked. There was a pause before the commander replied. "Long-range sensors have detected thousands of unknown vessels entering Confederation space from the rim. They're unlike anything we've ever seen." Kalazin looked at Meepo, his 4 eyes wide with realization. "The humans," he whispered. "They're coming back." Captain Lordax stood frozen on the bridge of his patrol ship. The display in front of him showed more vessels than he had ever seen in one place. They appeared out of nowhere, emerging from strange holes in space that closed behind them. "Sir," his second-in-command said, voice shaking, "we count over 3,000 ships. More are still coming through." Lordax, a veteran of the border fleet with 20 years of service, had never felt true fear until this moment. His green scales darkened with stress as he gave the order. "Send emergency signals to all Confederation worlds. We have a code black situation." On Centrum Prime, the capital planet of the Galactic Confederation, Professor Kalazin was brought before the High Council. The council chamber was circular, with seats for representatives of the 200-member species. Today, only the Emergency Council of 7 was present. "Professor," said Councillor Vedra, her thin frame barely visible under heavy ceremonial robes, "explain yourself." Kalazin's 4 eyes blinked nervously. "The cube we found was a beacon. It sent a signal to the unexplored regions beyond the rim. And now we have unknown ships entering our space," Vedra said coldly. She pointed to a large holographic display showing the approaching fleet. "You're humans, I presume." Kalazin moved closer to the display, studying the ships with wonder. They were nothing like Confederation designs. Where Confederation ships were smooth and rounded, these were angular with sharp edges. They moved in perfect formation, like dancers following ancient steps. "Yes," he whispered. "After all these years, the myths were true." The council members exchanged worried glances. "We need to establish contact," said Councillor Brell, an old Takurian with skin like bark, "before they reach populated systems." "And if they come with hostile intent?" asked another councillor. "The stories say humans were warriors." Vedra silenced them with a gesture. "We will send a diplomatic vessel. Professor Kalazin will join the mission, along with military advisors and language experts." Kalazin felt his heart race. "I would be honored. My assistant Meepo should come too. And we need Nell Peterson." "Who?" Vedra asked. "A xenolinguist who studies extinct languages. If these are humans, we need someone who might understand their speech." 2 days later, Kalazin, Meepo, and Nell Peterson boarded the diplomatic vessel Peaceful Overture *. Nell was an Arcadian, with pale pink skin and 6 fingers on each hand. Her people were known for their skill with languages. "I studied every fragment of supposed human language," Nell told Kalazin as they watched the ship leave orbit. "But I never thought I'd get to use it." The journey to the meeting point took 3 days. During that time, more human ships continued to arrive. Their fleet now numbered over 5,000 vessels. "They could crush the entire Confederation fleet with these numbers," said Commander Drek, the military advisor assigned to the mission. When they reached the meeting coordinates, the human fleet had stopped advancing. A single ship broke formation and moved toward them. It was smaller than the others, but still twice the size of the Peaceful Overture *. "They're sending a transmission," the communications officer announced. At first, they heard only strange sounds. Then came a series of mathematical sequences, prime numbers, then the value of p to many decimal places. "They're establishing basic intelligence," Nell said excitedly. Then came words in different languages, most unknown. Nell gasped when she heard one sequence. "That's it. That's one of the languages from the ancient texts." Her fingers flew across her console, composing a response using the same patterns. The reply came almost instantly. The voice was deep, clearly artificial, but the words were understandable thanks to Nell's translation program. "This is Fleet Admiral Sam Wright of the United Human Systems. We received your distress signal. Identify yourselves." Kalazin stepped forward, his voice steady despite his racing hearts. "I am Professor Kalazin of the Galactic Confederation. We welcome you to known space." There was a pause before the reply came. "Professor, we request a face-to-face meeting. A small delegation may board our command ship. Commander Drek objected immediately. It could be a trap. But Kalazin was already preparing to go. After 10,000 years, he said, humanity has returned to the stars. I will not miss this historic moment. The shuttle from the Asterisk, Peaceful Overture Asterisk, approached the human flagship slowly. Kalazin pressed his face against the viewport, trying to take in every detail of the massive vessel. Up close, the ship looked even more imposing. Its dark hull absorbed light rather than reflecting it, making it seem like a hole cut into space itself. The design is remarkable, Meepo whispered. No external lights, minimal markings. It's built for war, not to impress. Nell Peterson sat quietly, reviewing language notes on her tablet. Commander Drek and 2 security officers sat stiffly, hands never far from their weapons. We're receiving docking instructions, the pilot announced. Their shuttle slid into a brightly lit hangar bay. As the doors closed behind them, gravity shifted slightly. Their artificial gravity is stronger than ours, Meepo noted. When the shuttle doors opened, they faced 6 humans standing in perfect formation. 5 wore identical dark uniforms with small symbols on their collars. The 6th, standing slightly ahead of the others, wore a uniform with more elaborate markings. Kalazin had seen ancient images of humans, but nothing prepared him for seeing them in person. They were taller than he expected, with only 2 eyes and skin in various shades of brown. They had hair on their heads in different colors and styles. They stood completely still, watching the visitors with unreadable expressions. The leader stepped forward. I am Fleet Admiral Sam Wright of the United Human Systems. Welcome aboard the Asterisk Horizon Asterisk. His voice was deep, and he spoke slowly, as if aware that they might have trouble understanding him. Admiral Wright had short gray hair and lines on his face that Kalazin guessed meant age. I am Professor Kalazin of the Vosh. This is Nell Peterson, our linguist, Meepo, my assistant, and Commander Drek of Confederation Security. Admiral Wright nodded to each of them. Please follow me. We have prepared a meeting room. They walked through corridors lined with more humans, all of whom stopped and stood at attention as the Admiral passed. Kalazin noticed that despite their similar uniforms, the humans varied greatly in appearance. The meeting room had a large table with chairs sized for different species. The Admiral had clearly prepared for their visit. We have much to discuss, Admiral Wright said once they were seated. First, I should explain that humanity never went extinct. Kalazin felt his heart pounding with excitement. The stories said you vanished 8,000 years ago after a great war. Not vanished. Retreated. The Admiral pressed a button, and a star map appeared above the table. Following the Nexus War, humanity withdrew to the Galactic Rim. We established colonies far from the core worlds where we once lived. Why retreat when you could have stayed? Commander Drek asked. Admiral Wright's face darkened. The war changed us. We developed weapons and abilities that frightened even ourselves. We chose isolation to protect both ourselves and the younger species of the galaxy. Nell leaned forward. You've been watching us all this time. From a distance, we maintained hidden observation posts. We saw the rise of the Confederation, the development of your technology, the spread of your species across the stars. But why return now? Kalazin asked. The beacon you activated was designed for one purpose, to summon us if our old territories were ever threatened. It was never meant to be used unless the situation was dire. Wright studied them carefully. So I must ask you, Professor Kalazin, what threat was so great that you needed to call us back from exile? Kalazin and Meepo exchanged confused looks. We didn't activate it on purpose. Meepo touched it, and it responded automatically. The room grew silent. Admiral Wright stood up slowly, his expression grim. You mean to tell me that humanity's return after 8,000 years of self-imposed exile was an accident? Before Kalazin could respond, an alarm sounded. A human officer rushed into the room. Admiral, we're detecting massive energy signatures approaching from intergalactic space. The pattern matches the archived readings of the Void Swarm. Wright's face went pale. How long do we have? At current speed, 3 days until they reach the outer systems. Wright turned to the Confederation visitors. Now we know why the beacon activated. The threat has returned, the very same threat that caused us to create our most terrible weapons. The enemy that nearly destroyed us all 8,000 years ago. The Confederation Council chamber was filled with raised voices. Representatives from 20 major worlds argued as news of the Void Swarm spread. Admiral Sam Wright stood calmly in the center of the storm, waiting for silence. The Void Swarm is not a myth, he said when the noise finally died down. They appear every 10,000 years from the space between galaxies. They consume all matter in their path. Councillor Vedra raised a hand. If this threat is real, why don't our histories mention it? They do, said Kalazin, stepping forward with an ancient data tablet. But we misunderstood. The Great Darkness in our oldest texts wasn't a metaphor. It was this Void Swarm. On the main screen, images from human records showed the swarm, a vast cloud of darkness, filled with millions of small entities that looked like black stars, with purple lightning between them. Last time they came, Wright continued, humanity was at its peak. We had settled thousands of worlds. We had technology beyond anything you have now. And still, we barely survived. How did you defeat them? Asked Councillor Brell. Wright's face grew hard. We created a weapon. It worked, but the cost was too high. In another part of the human flagship, Nell Peterson worked with the human science officer Jack Taylor. They studied the encrypted data from the beacon. Jack was younger than most humans Nell had met, with dark skin and quick hands that moved rapidly across the control panels. The encryption is complex, Jack said. It was designed to keep this information hidden, even from most humans. Nell's translator struggled with some of his words, but she understood enough. Why hide information about a weapon that saved everyone? Jack looked at her with sad eyes. Because using it changed us at a basic level. It twisted our genetic code, gave us abilities that frightened even ourselves. After hours of work, they broke through the encryption. Data flooded the screens around them. Technical plans, genetic sequences, and historical footage. Nell gasped as she watched recordings of humans from the past war. Their eyes glowed with purple light as they controlled massive energy fields with their minds. The weapon requires living human operators, Jack explained. It taps into something deep in our DNA and amplifies it. Each use pushed the operators further from their original humanity. That's why you retreated to the rim, Nell said, understanding finally dawning. Jack nodded. After the war, those who used the weapon changed too much. Some couldn't even live on normal planets anymore. Our leaders feared we might become something worse than the swarm if we continued down that path. On the bridge of the Horizon Asterisk, Admiral Wright met with Commander Drek and the newly arrived General Devon Howard of the Confederation military. Howard was a sturdy Alaxian with 4 arms and reddish skin. Your ships have impressive weapons, Howard said, reviewing the human fleet specifications. But according to these readings, the swarm is at least 10 times larger than what you faced before. Wright nodded grimly. Conventional weapons will slow them down but won't stop them. We need a new strategy. What about your special weapon? Drek asked. The one you don't want to use. It would require thousands of human operators, Wright said. Many would be permanently changed, no longer fully human. Some would die. I won't order that sacrifice unless there's no other choice. Alarms sounded throughout the ship. A lieutenant rushed in. Admiral, the swarm has accelerated. They'll reach the Vega colony in 18 hours. Impossible, Wright said. Even at their fastest, they shouldn't move that quickly. They've changed, Howard realized. Evolved since your last encounter. Wright turned to the view screen showing the approaching darkness. Prepare the fleet for immediate departure. We'll make our stand at Vega. As Wright left to prepare his forces, Drek pulled Howard aside. "Do you trust these humans?" he whispered. "What if they created this swarm as an excuse to return to Confederation space?" Howard watched Wright's retreating back. "I don't know. But right now, they're the only ones who know how to fight this enemy." Meanwhile, in their research lab, Nell made an important discovery. "Jack, look at this. These genetic markers. They match some of the new Confederation biotechnology. I think we might be able to modify your weapon, make it less costly to its operators." Jack's eyes widened with hope. "If we can do that, we might save both our peoples without losing our humanity in the process." The Vega colony was the oldest and largest Confederation outpost near the border of known space. 2 million people from 30 different species lived on its green continents. Now they were evacuating as quickly as possible, filling every transport ship that could reach the planet. From the bridge of the Horizon Asterisk, Admiral Wright watched the human fleet take up defensive positions around Vega. 3,000 ships formed a wall between the planet and the approaching void swarm. "Evacuation is 60% complete," reported a human officer. "We need at least 6 more hours to get everyone off-world." "We'll give them that time," Wright said firmly. General Howard stood beside Wright, watching the human crews work with perfect efficiency. "Your people fight like they've done this before. We have. For 8,000 years, we've been preparing for the swarm's return. Every human learns combat skills from childhood. Every ship is built for war." Howard frowned. "You lived your entire history expecting to fight this battle." "We lived hoping we would never have to," Wright corrected, "but preparing nonetheless." The first attack came without warning. A dark cloud appeared at the edge of the system, moving faster than any natural phenomenon. It split into thousands of smaller clouds that rushed toward the fleet. "All ships, engage at will," Wright ordered. "Priority is buying time for the evacuation." The human ships fired as one. Energy beams cut through space, hitting the approaching swarm entities. Where the beams struck, the darkness scattered, but quickly reformed. "Conventional weapons are having minimal effect," reported the weapons officer. On the planet below, Calazin helped coordinate the evacuation. He watched the battle in the sky with a mixture of terror and awe. The human ships moved with incredible precision, blocking the swarm's attempts to reach the planet. "They fight as if they share one mind," Meepo said as they rushed a group of children onto a transport. "Not one mind," Calazin corrected. "One purpose. They've spent thousands of years preparing for this moment." In the science lab of the Horizon Asterisk, Nell and Jack worked frantically. They had transferred their findings to a secure testing chamber where a small prototype of the human weapon was being modified. "The Confederation biotech should work," Nell said, her fingers flying across the control panel. "It can create a buffer that protects the human operator's genetic code from permanent change." Jack checked the readings. "It's not perfect. They'll still experience temporary transformation, but they should return to normal afterward." A violent shudder ran through the ship as it took a direct hit from a swarm entity. The lights flickered. "We're running out of time," Jack said. On the bridge, Wright received the casualty reports. 20 human ships destroyed. Hundreds of crew members lost. The swarm had barely been slowed. "Admiral," General Howard said quietly, "your people are dying to protect mine." "Why?" Wright's eyes never left the tactical display. "Because that's what we do. Humanity has always been willing to sacrifice for others, even after we forgot you, after we turned you into myths. That was our choice. We wanted to be forgotten." Wright turned to Howard. "We left because we feared what using our weapon would turn us into. But sometimes the risk of doing nothing is greater than the risk of action." Wright's communication device beeped. It was Jack from the science lab. "Admiral, we've done it. The weapon has been modified with Confederation biotech. It should be safer for our operators now." Wright closed his eyes briefly. "How many operators do we need?" "At least 1,000 for a swarm this size. The more we have, the higher our chances of success, and the risk to the operators. There was a pause before Jack answered. Reduced but still significant. Temporary transformation is certain. Permanent effects are possible for about 20%. Death rate estimated at 5%. Wright opened a channel to the entire human fleet. This is Admiral Wright. We now face the same enemy our ancestors fought 8,000 years ago. We have modified our greatest weapon, but it requires volunteers to operate. I will not order anyone to take this risk. The responses flooded in immediately. From every ship, human crew members volunteered. Tell Jack to prepare the weapon, Wright ordered, and tell the Confederation ships to pull back to a safe distance. They've never seen what humanity can really do. The sky above Vega Colony darkened as thousands more human ships suddenly appeared from hidden positions throughout nearby star systems. Wright had kept most of humanity's true fleet hidden, revealing only a small fraction of their numbers until this moment. How is this possible? General Howard asked, staring at the tactical display showing ships emerging from what seemed like empty space. There are 10 times more ships than before. We never truly abandoned our ancient territories, Wright explained. We placed ships in deep hibernation throughout Confederation space, waiting, watching. The new vessels took up positions in a sphere around the battle zone. Their hulls were different from the others, darker, absorbing all light that touched them. From the observation deck of a Confederation rescue ship, Kalazin and Meepo watched in awe as the human reinforcements arrived. The stories were true, Kalazin whispered. The old text said, humanity's ships darkened the skies like a storm during the ancient war. On the bridge of the Horizon Asterisk, Jack and Nell arrived with their final report. The weapon is ready, Jack said. 1,428 volunteers have been connected to the system. Nell looked at the faces of the human crew. They know what might happen to them. They do, Wright assured her. Every human is taught about the price our ancestors paid in the First War. Wright opened a channel to all ships. This is Admiral Wright to all Confederation vessels. Move to minimum safe distance of 3 light minutes. What you are about to witness may be disturbing. Remember that no matter what you see, we are still your allies. In the weapon control room deep inside the Horizon Asterisk, hundreds of human volunteers lay in special chambers connected to the ship's systems. Similar chambers on other ships held the rest of the volunteers. Their eyes were closed, their breathing slow. Jack stood at the main control panel, initiating neural sync in 3, 2, 1. As the system activated, the volunteers' eyes snapped open. Instead of normal human eyes, theirs now glowed with bright purple light, the same color as the energy between swarm entities. Neural network established, Jack reported. Weapon warming up. On the bridge, Wright and the others watched as the human weapon carriers began to change. Their skin took on a metallic sheen. Patterns of light moved beneath their skin like flowing circuits. The final stage is beginning, Wright said quietly. The part that changed us before. The weapon-bearing ships moved forward as one, forming a new pattern. Energy beams of deep purple shot from ship to ship, connecting them in a vast web. What's happening to your people? Howard asked, his voice hushed. They're becoming the weapon, Wright answered. Their minds are linking together, creating a quantum field that can disrupt the swarm's energy pattern. The connected ships began to pulse with light. The volunteers inside them raised their hands in perfect unison, though they were separated by thousands of kilometers. As they did, the web of energy between the ships expanded outward. When it reached the swarm, the effect was immediate. Where the energy touched the dark entities, they broke apart, unable to maintain their form. It's working, Nell gasped. But on the screens showing the volunteers, their transformation continued. Their features became less distinct, their bodies seeming to merge with the energy flowing through them. Some cried out in pain. Others smiled with expressions of strange joy. We're losing them, Jack said, his voice breaking. The buffer isn't holding for all of them. Can we stop it? Nell asked desperately. If we stop now, the swarm will reform, Wright said. The process must complete. The energy field continued to expand, pushing the swarm back. The darkness that had threatened to engulf Vega Colony was retreating, breaking apart wherever the purple energy touched it. On the screens, some of the volunteers had stopped looking human altogether. They had become beings of pure energy, their physical forms dissolving. What happens to them now? Howard asked. Some will return to normal, thanks to your biotechnology, Wright said, his voice heavy with grief and pride. Others will remain changed forever. A few will be lost completely. As the last of the swarm entities disintegrated, a new kind of light filled the space where they had been. Shaped vaguely like humans but made of pure energy, hundreds of transformed operators floated free of their ships. They're beautiful, Kalazin said from the observation deck. The transformed beings gathered together, forming a swirling cloud of light. Then, as one, they turned toward the edge of the galaxy and accelerated away, disappearing into the darkness between stars. 1 month after the battle at Vega Colony, the Confederation Grand Hall was filled with representatives from all member worlds. At the center stood Admiral Sam Wright, now aged beyond his years. The weapon had affected even those who commanded it from a distance, silver streaks now running through his hair, deep lines etched into his face. Today we formalize the alliance between the United Human Systems and the Galactic Confederation, announced Counselor Vedra. Her voice carried through the vast chamber. Humanity is no longer myth but partner. The crowd erupted in cheers. Species that had once thought humans were bedtime stories now stood alongside them. After the ceremony, Kalazin found Wright staring out a window at the Confederation capital city. You've been given rooms in the North Tower, Kalazin said. The best views on Centrum Prime. Wright smiled faintly. 8,000 years ago, we had cities here. It's strange to be visitors in places we once called home. Will you reclaim your old territories? Kalazin asked. No, those worlds belong to new species now. We'll settle the unclaimed systems nearby. Start fresh. Wright turned to face the professor. Your work is now the most popular course at the university. The True History of Humanity. Kalazin's 4 eyes blinked with embarrassment. I still got so much wrong. In another part of the city, Nell Peterson and Jack Taylor walked through a memorial garden planted to honor those lost in the battle. 812 human operators had not returned to their original form. 243 had been completely lost. Have you heard anything from them? Nell asked. Jack knew she meant the transformed operators who had left for the galaxy's edge. Brief transmissions. They're establishing a colony in deep space. They say they can sense the swarm still out there, between galaxies. They'll stand guard. Will they ever come back? They're not fully human anymore. But they're not gone either. Jack touched a memorial stone gently. They chose their path. On a newly established human settlement world, General Howard watched human ships bringing supplies and settlers. After the battle, many Confederation species had volunteered to help humanity rebuild. They lived so simply, Howard remarked to Meepo, who had become something of a cultural ambassador. Their technology could make life so much easier. That's not their way, Meepo explained. They believe comfort leads to weakness. Each generation must earn its place. A difficult philosophy, but effective. They saved us all. In his new office at the Confederation Central Archives, Kalazin finished recording the true history of humanity. His research now filled an entire wing of the building. Visitors from across the galaxy came to learn about the species that had chosen to become myth to protect others from their power. On the final page of his book, Kalazin wrote, "Humanity was willing to be forgotten by the galaxy they helped shape. For 8,000 years, they lived in exile, preparing for a battle they hoped would never come. When called, they returned without hesitation, sacrificing themselves for people who didn't even remember them. There is no greater definition of nobility in any language of any species. At a distant observation post at the galaxy's edge, the transformed human operators maintained their vigil. No longer fully human, but still carrying human hearts, they watched for signs of the swarm's return. They sent regular messages back to both human and Confederation worlds. One such message reached Admiral Wright as he stood on the bridge of the Horizon Asterisk, now orbiting humanity's new homeworld. From the Deep Watch to all worlds, we stand guard between galaxies. The darkness will not pass us. Live in peace, knowing we remain vigilant. We are changed but not lost. We remember who we were and why we chose this path. Wright read the message to his crew, then looked out at the stars. For 8,000 years we lived as ghosts, hiding from what we might become, he said softly. Now we have faced that fear and found that humanity isn't defined by our form, but by our choices. On planets across the galaxy, children of 100 species looked up at the night sky and told each other new stories. Not about mythical humans who vanished long ago, but about real ones whose ships had darkened the skies to save them all.